everybody. My name is Alison Wood, and I am presenting Draft Policy 2017-1. And I encourage you to reference your discussion guide because the text is in there. One clarification, it refers to 2015-5, and the correction is it should be 2016-5, if you take a look in there. All right. All right, with the adoption of 2016-5, the transfer policy is severed from the ARIN allocation assignment policy. And so an algorithm has been developed to make the transfer more predictable and the correct size. And it will align it more with organizational growth and give it some predictability and stability. So the solution is that organizations who demonstrate efficient utilization to the utilization of their most recent transfer to extrapolate a 2-year projection up to double the size of their previous request. And that's a tiny bit confusing, so we do have some real world examples in the next couple slides, so stay with me. All right, so all of this is in your discussion guide. These are the proposed changes, and the algorithm is described here in this paragraph, but we're going to look at a real-world scenario of that. So if you're an ISP and you asked for a /26 about 90 days ago, and you used over 50% of it and can demonstrate that you have used those IP addresses, then you can come back in and using this algorithm, ask for 64 addresses divided by 90 days times 730, which would give you 520 IP addresses or /23 approximately. And then you would have to demonstrate that over the next 2 years, you're going to use about 50% of those addresses. So here's and again, this I believe is in your discussion guide. If not, it's here. And this is just a breakdown of the real world scenario that I just explained with the actual algorithm. So if you want to follow that. So a couple discussion points on this policy is that, as a community, do you believe that we truly need this change now that we have the new transfer policy? Especially some of the policies that were addressed over the last day and a half. And if this change isn't necessary, is there a need to provide a different path for qualification of slow start transfers?
Find my trusty cell phone /clock. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Right
I'll
here.
try to keep Tom from taking your phone again.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Well, the microphones are open. We are for sure competing with chocolate.
I know.
As I look out onto the vast tan
coma.
seats, both in terms of just people getting to the microphones and are there comments on this policy proposal? Please approach a microphone, start typing me. This is your last chance to contribute to policy this meeting. Other than the ever exciting open microphone. Owen is approaching a microphone.
One's approaching a chair.
I tried. Well, we've all have the microphones open if you'd like to discuss the policy proposal. Owen. 2017-1.
I can cover the algorithm one more time.
Maybe you should go through that last example.
Okay.
We're going to go through one last example just because we saw a few people sneak in.
Okay, Andrew's up.
No, go for it.
Okay. All right. So to go over that real world example one last time, let me back up to the slide one more. All right. So if you're an ISP and you're a small ISP, and you asked for a /26 3 months ago, and you have documented that you've used 50% of those addresses, you can use this algorithm, the slow start algorithm, to come forward and ask for more addresses that you're going to use over the next 2 years. And so the algorithm is that you could ask for 64 addresses divided by 90 days. That was how long it's been since your last transfer, times 730, meaning that you could technically ask for 520 addresses or a /23, and then document 50% of the use of those over the next 2 years.
So, we try and make remote participation as equal as possible so you understand what's happening. These ARIN staff have outdone themselves with the plethora of chocolate treats at the break, and we may have induced a small coma here in the room. we'll be mailing all of you who are remotely participating one of them so you can participate, assuming that doesn't violate some state law of some kind.
Nope, they're all mine. Thank you.
Front microphone, please.
Andrew Dull, CrowdStrike, the shepherd, one of the other shepherds on this policy. I think the question that we probably would be most helpful to the AC as we discuss this is, is this policy ideas in this still necessary given the likely adoption of the /16 transfer change that we, overwhelmingly supported yesterday? This would apply to large organizations beyond a size 16, so perhaps this would be useful to those organizations as well. But we would like to hear if this is necessary or not, or this has perhaps been obsoleted by events.
If you'd like, we would totally invite input on that question. Please approach a mic or start typing. Rear microphone, please.
Joel, a very root level technology. My question about this policy, and this is maybe just a point of clarification, you're asking smaller ISPs for /20, 26, 24 to request more. Why shouldn't this just come from the pool that's been reserved for /24s to implement V6 as well? Has that been considered? Rather than trying to wait on new IPs coming in, ARIN already has a pool that has 99.3% still available of a /8, I believe. Is that correct?
Dan? Dan's going to address.
/10, I'm sorry, of a /10. And that's directly for the purpose of awarding a /24 up to every 6 months to help implement V6. So why wouldn't we use that for this policy, I guess, is my question.
The shepherds may be able to clarify this better, but the /26 may have just been a confusing example. The section we're talking about modifying is actually the Section 8 transfers. So it's not actually related to any of the special allocations.
Okay, but again, if a small ISP is requesting a /24, let's just use that as an example. Why wouldn't we forward them to the free /24s that are currently available from the reserve pool rather than have this address it?
They
I don't know if I'm asking
they actually
the question.
wouldn't be because the minimum request is
What, back you two. Dan first.
listen,
No, go ahead, Dan.
No worries. They actually wouldn't be because the minimum allocation is a 24.
John.
It's also possible that the party needs IPv4 addresses, and they need IPv4 addresses for the purposes that aren't compatible with the reserve policy, which is for purposes of deployment of IPv6. We do actually assess that. It's possible that someone to come in and say, I'm going to use this and it's for this purpose. And we go, how does it enable IPv6 deployment? And they go, it doesn't. And we go, we got nothing.
Thank you.
Owen, did you have a direct response to that first before your comment? Or?
Yeah, I do. 4.10 was very specifically oriented towards transitional technologies, as the author of 4.10.
How convenient!
And it was, it was specifically intended for if you're going to do something like 6RD or certain other types of transitional V6 deployments that involve certain technologies of tunneling most of your V6 through your existing V4 infrastructure. You need a certain amount of V4 address space for that infrastructure in order to be able to do that. And this was to provide that specific V4 address space for that specific purpose. It was not intended to be, well, I'm also deploying V6, but I need V4 just because I need V4, and so I'm going to go use this chunk of address space for that. It's not designed for that. If you're not using it specifically in a way that specifically enables your V6 deployment because you're using something like 6RD or some other V4 dependent V6 deployment technology, of which there are unfortunately many, then it really wouldn't apply to you, and you really wouldn't be eligible to receive space from that pool under the at least intent of the policy. You may be able to find some letter of the law way to get around that.
So thank you for your clarification. Did you also have a comment?
I also had a comment. I think that this proposal has at this point been largely overtaken by events. I think that the /16 oriented policy we discussed yesterday obviates the need for it by and large. I think that the fact that this would allow much larger chunks on a more liberal basis would actually work as an end run around the more constrained intent of that policy, and I therefore oppose this policy.
Even putting aside the policy yesterday, if that policy just didn't exist, would you be in support?
I would still oppose this because it doesn't have sufficient constraints.
Thank you. Far side microphone, please.
So, if the
And your
John
thank
Springer,
you.
I'm unaffiliated except for a position on the ARIN Advisory Council. If the choice of the subnets is accidentally unfortunate here, I'm less in support of the slow start aspect of it. But if it is meant to enable individuals to use the transfer market for larger blocks, I am in support of continuing to work on it.
Thank you. If you would like to, if you would like to comment on 2017-1, clarify slow start for transfers, please approach a microphone quickly because I do not see anybody other than Jason right now. So we will close the microphones after he speaks. Please go ahead, front microphone.
Jason Schiller, Google, ASOAC. The policy we discussed yesterday, one of the slides talked about how one of the co-authors of the policy did not like the /16 cap. My intention was for the policy that we discussed yesterday to be paired with also the policy that allows anyone to get a /24 if they don't have any direct resources as a way to implement slow start in the transfer world, and in a sort of simplified sort of way. My intention with the policy we discussed yesterday was if you needed more than a /16 every 6 months, you could only take a 16, you could use it, show that you're using it, and then take another 16. Rinse, wash, repeat. But that was taken out. And the reason why it was taken out was because it said, if you're big enough that you need more than a 16 every 6 months, then you're big enough to use the standard process. I really hate the standard process. This 2-year future-looking, hand-waving justification, it's very difficult to come up with. It's very hard to chase down marketing guys and to put some teeth into getting a real number. And it's very hard for ARIN to question the reality of those numbers. I mean, they're not really in a position to say, your business plan looks like crap. All they can really do if they think it's not a decent request is to push back and ask more clarifying questions. And what this creates is an unpredictable result. It's unclear how many back and forths it's going to take before your request gets approved. And it's unclear how likely ARIN is to approve it, because there's no useful metrics here. What I did like when ARIN had space was slow start, because that made sense. I used up the space, it lasted less than 2 years, give me a bigger one, and when I use that up and it lasts less than 2 years, give me a bigger one again. And that was my attempt to do here. It's simply to implement slow start, but modified slightly in 2 ways. One, to have an adjustable look-back window because things may have been placed on hold because you could not execute a transfer in a timely manner. So you need to be able to start the clock when a particular transfer occurred. The idea was to look back 1 or more transfers, figure out what the average daily utilization of IP addresses are, and simply project that out to 2 years. I would have much preferred taking off the /16 cap and getting a 16 at a time and showing that you're using it and coming back. But I was deferred away from that and said use the standard process. And it's not clear to me if the standard process actually supports the slow start anymore because of the way it's been severed from Section 4. So this was just an attempt to make it very clear that this doubling is still supported.
Okay, so you are in support then of the...
I do support it, yes.
Thank you so much. Microphones are now closed. Any remote participation before we... Nope. rear microphone for our last comment.
Hi, Elvis Velevi, Forest Crow. While I already mentioned a few minutes ago that I would be in favor of removing any needs-based policy in the ARIN region, and comparing to what happened in the RIBE region, where more than 3 years ago the needs-based was completely removed, and well, it works. I am in favor of any policy proposals that would relax the requirements and allow people to actually transfer address space. Therefore, I'm in favor of this policy proposal, and I would like to see even further steps towards even further relaxing the transfer policy.
Thank you for that, and that ends our discussion. Thank you to Alison for the presentation, and thank you very much for your time on this. I'll hand it back to John.